Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and this is Power Pop. And tonight we are looking at the Raspberries 1974 album, Starting Over. I want to welcome Ryan Gavalier from Ryan's Vinyl Destination, Davy Gallagher from Davy's Cinema Flicks and Music Picks, and debuting tonight from Australia, subscriber Richard Henderson. So without any further ado, let's get started.
This is one.
Can I do that again?
Starting Over, the Raspberries.
This is two.
Raspberries. Starting Over, the Raspberries' new album is on Capitol Records and Tapes.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we are looking at the Raspberries' fourth album, Starting Over. This is the fourth studio album by the 1970s power pop band Raspberries. It peaked at 143 on the Billboard Pop chart in 1974. The LP generated the number 18 Billboard Pop single, Overnight Sensation hit record. Had a second single called Cruisin' Music that did not chart. Michael McBride's drumming on this one. He had drummed with Eric Carmen and Bryson in a couple of previous bands. And Scott McCarl, who is also playing bass and is doing vocals. Jim Bonfanti and Dave Smalley left the band in the prior release. All Music gave this album a 3.5 and Village Voice gave it an A-. I want to welcome the panel tonight. I want to welcome Davy. I want to welcome Ryan and Rich. This is Rich's first time on the show. Hopefully we don't have any issues on this version. This is our second time trying to tape this. And now, when you're doing live, you never know what's going to happen. So tonight we're going to start out with Ryan, go to Davy, and then Rich, and then to me. And we'll just go through. We'll try to do an hour. And Ryan Gavalier, nice to see you. What's your take on Raspberries Starting Over?
Okay. So Starting Over, as I was saying on our last recording, is definitely my least favorite of the Raspberries albums. I think it's good. I think that most of the material on here is at least acceptable, but I think quite a bit of it tends to not be extremely original or memorable, honestly. There's some really good stuff on here, and then a lot that I'm just kind of about. Overnight Sensation, I think, is a good song. I don't quite understand why it's one of their biggest hits, to be honest. It doesn't have anything about it that really makes it seem like a hit song to me. It's kind of...
It's about wanting a hit song, that's why.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's about wanting a hit song.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's not really overly catchy. It's kind of cheesy, to be completely honest. And like, I think it's decent, but like, I'm not real thrilled about it. Play On, I think, is a better track. It's a bit more rockin', honestly. And I think there's some pretty heavy stuff on here. This one has Scott McCarl singing on it, which he's a new member to the band. Yeah, he's a really good vocalist. I like his performances.
He's a really
on here.
Talented guy. Even
better, though, is the next track, Party's Over, which for me is definitely the best track on this album. And this song is killer. It's got good little cowbell, cool riff, real sleazy feeling. Honestly, this song, once again, shows that Kiss was probably definitely listening to the Raspberries. This one definitely has a Kiss kind of feel to it.
Paul Stanley has been open about his love of the Raspberries.
Yeah, and it really shows on here. This totally sounds like a Kiss song.
Yeah,
honestly.
true. Yeah.
and I think it's awesome. I mean, it's catchy. Wally is singing on this one. Good raspy, kind of more aggressive vocal performance. And it's just extremely catchy. I love the little piano parts in it. Kind of gives it like a barroom kind of feel. And just real catchy chorus. I don't know what I want. It's okay, but it's just won't get fooled again by the Who. Like the riff is literally the same. Down, down, down. Then it has the drum fills.
The drums are totally I Can See for Miles. They're totally the same kind of drum sound. That real wacky tin can, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And the fills also sound like they could be from Won't Get Fooled Again as well. It's a very Who inspired song, and I mean, Eric's vocals are good, and I guess like it's a fine song, but it's just not really very engaging or Raspberries. Like, it just sounds like the Who light.
Very power poppy though, I'll give you that.
Kind of, yeah. It's all right.
It's a very affectionate tribute to the Who.
There's parts of it that are more power pop than others.
True.
Yeah, Rose-Colored Glasses, decent. It's a bit more of a chill song than some of the other stuff that's happened so far, but just really not very memorable to me. I do think it's better than I Don't Know What I Want, though. All Through the Night is okay. It's a good rockin' song. I'm not really a huge fan of that chorus, that all through the night. It's just kind of cheesy to me, honestly. Cruisin' Music, though, very Beach Boys influenced. I like this song quite a bit because it is catchy. Eric gives a great vocal on it. And even though it is Beach Boys influenced, it kind of has a bit more of an edge to it than some of the Beach Boys stuff. So I think it's cool in that feel.
Do you like it better as a Beach Boys tribute to Driving Around?
Oh, yeah, I like it more than Driving Around for sure.
So do I.
I'm not really a big Driving Around fan, honestly.
Yeah, I think the last time you said that, Ryan, you weren't all that into that.
I think this is a better thing of what they're trying to do with that. I Can Hardly Believe You're Mine is decent. That one's it's like a Eric kind of ballad type of song. I think it's sweet, and I think it's better than the next ballad that we'll get to later, Starting Over. I'm not too huge on that one, but I do think that this one's overall pretty catchy, and Cry is also a pretty solid song, and Scott sings on this. It's another kind of more laid back, kind of beautiful song, honestly. It's definitely one of the more emotional tracks on this album, which is something I feel like is missing from a lot of it. None of it really hits me emotionally. Even like Overnight Sensation, I just feel very apathetic to it. It's kind of trying to be like triumphant or dramatic, but doesn't really have any emotion behind it.
It's an album very much about craft, isn't it? This album, it's really about craft.
None of the feeling, though, and it's kind of a shame. Hands on You is kind of cool because the production's sort of like lo-fi, and it's kind of like a chill song. I don't know. I think it's interesting to me because the whole production of the album isn't great, but this one, it almost works in its favor, where it feels kind of like a homemade type of song, like someone made in their bedroom or something. And it's a decently catchy song with Wally and Scott singing on it. Starting Over is a decent like ballad type of song. I think it's just kind of where I think this album we're starting to see a little bit of cheesy Eric, to be honest. And I think this song's an example of it. Like, I think he had so many like heartfelt ballads in the past that were just really effective. On this album, they're starting to feel a little sappy to me, or a little less inspired. So honestly, like, I'm not really a huge fan of this album. I think it's listenable, and I think that there's some gems on it. But as a whole, I can't say it's an album experience quite like the other three. Like, I think the others are all knockouts of albums, but I think this one, the cracks were really starting to form, and it's honestly a shame that it's their last album because it's not really where I want to see them go out on, honestly. It's kind of disappointing. My rating I'm gonna give for it is a 6 out of 10, which I think my lowest before that was an 8. So I definitely think this is quite a drop from the others. I still think it's a better than average album. Like, if it was a band I like less, I think I would be easier on this album. But because I love the Raspberries other stuff so much, I just can't really be very positive about it just because it's a real drop in quality for me.
So is it, Ryan, I'm just curious real quick. And thanks for your review, by the way. Is it because of the lineup changes, you think? Is it the quality of the material? I mean, is it, or is it a combination of things that really?
I think it's definitely a combination of things. I mean, I think that obviously not having Jim Bonfani and Dave Smalley there, more so Dave Smalley, because Jim wasn't really much of a songwriter, but like Dave Smalley, I mean, his songs are pretty memorable, honestly, a lot of the time. And there are a lot of really good rockers too. So I feel like we're kind of missing that. And even though there's some rockers on here, it's more like Eric and Scott kind of rockers. And I feel like they don't have quite the same charm in some ways. I feel like Eric is not on his A game on this album. I don't think his songwriting's really at its best here. I don't think he's vocally quite at his best either. I definitely think he had way better vocal performances on other albums. But I will say, I think Scott and William McBride are both good musicians, and I think their contributions, both vocally for Scott and musically for both of them, I think they're both really talented and they added good things. I just don't think the songs are here. Okay. I don't think the production is here. I think it's noticeably the worst sounding Raspberries album. It just sounds rushed and it sounds like they didn't really care that much, honestly. I don't think Eric really gave a shit at this point about the band or what they were going to keep doing. I don't think the people in the band really gave a shit. And I think it really shows.
Well, I think they know this was the end.
They actually claim that maybe it says that they didn't know, honestly. No, but it definitely feels like they know.
Well, the Wally Bryson song definitely feels that way.
Yeah. No, apparently they thought they were still going to do more, but nope.
All right. So you give it a 6.
Yeah,
6 out of
and that's being generous, honestly.
Okay. That's fair enough. It's a great review.
Thanks.
Let's bump it over to Davy. Davy, what's your thoughts on this one?
I'm with Brian on the overall idea that this is the worst of the 4, but also with the notion that that's comparing to the Raspberries catalogue. So, it's nothing to be ashamed of. That one of them has to be the worst of them. Overnight Sensation, I do actually really like. I love the intro. The note sounds funny. I'm not in it for the money. You actually believe Eric. You kind of believe that he's not in it for the money for that few seconds. It's a pretty fun piss take of the music business and their career thus far. It's a bit weird though because they have had hit singles. It's hit albums that have been the problems. So it's like, what are you really complaining about here? I like that it goes from 70s ballads to these massive kind of Beach Boys-like choruses, plus, it's a just explosion of this wall of sound. Sounds terrific. And then singing about the industry itself is almost like a proto-Spirit of Radio kind of thing, which I quite like the idea of doing that. But again, I'm not really sure what the target is. I like the section where we hear it as a radio, through a radio, but that only lasts for 10 seconds. I could actually have done a whole chorus of that. That would have been quite fun. Massive drums from Michael McBride. What a way to introduce yourself is that drum. When it's just fading out and then he comes in with that massive drum solo, that is unreal. That is absolutely unreal. What a way to introduce yourself. And then a tiny little swatch of Go All The Way at the end, which I thought was really cool. Just to kind of remind you, hey, we did have a hit single. So they didn't forget after all. Play On. Scott, I keep wanting to call him Carl. Scott wants to introduce himself here. Like Ryan said, it's a pure rocker, but it seems to be replacing the kind of thing we'd get from Dave Smalley. It's very well done, but Scott doesn't add much to the band based on this. Interesting though, that it is another kind of piss take on the music scene, with the the whole just play your songs and the girls will come and see you lines and stuff. Which, as we know, is something that Eric had mentioned as a bugbear, that they couldn't get the guys interested because that's where the real money was in terms of selling albums and concert tickets. Party's over. I know you said, Grant, there that you thought this was an allusion to them, to Wally thinking this is the end of the band. But to me...
sounds like it.
Well, to me, it sounds more like it's a goodbye to the previous members of the band. So it's a goodbye to, Dave and Jim.
Could be.
It's odd to follow Play On. It's not a very different sound sonically at all. And that's something that this whole album has, is it doesn't have many sonic changes. Wally does sound the hell out of it, and there's some lovely interplay between the piano and guitar, where Eric's not playing fancy piano for change. He's playing more like Nicky Hopkins would as a session guy for the Stones or something. He's playing that kind of piano, just doing these kind of fun fill-ins. Lots of cowbell. And then, as you mentioned there, I'm crazy, but I don't give a shit. Makes you go, oh, language, Wally, language.
I know.
Yeah, and again, it feels like a farewell to Dave and Jim. I don't know what I want. Probably Eric's raunchiest vocal that we've had from him this far in the catalogue. The chorus vocal line seems quite No More Mr. Nice Guy by Alice Cooper. Just the chorus vocal line itself, not the actual chorus. The chorus, Eric really sings the hell out of that one. With the whole, I don't know what I want, but I want it now. Those bits is really hollering those parts. Cool rocker, and again, Michael's drums are the star of the show for that. For me, I think he's just fantastic.
He's fantastic.
Fantastic drummer. Rose-colored glasses from Scott. Very different vocal from the one he had on Play On, so it's decent to see he was versatile. Melancholic. I like that he seems to be convincing himself to be optimistic, even though he knows things aren't that great. I like the orchestration. It's kind of reminded me of earlier Raspberries, but it just doesn't compare with those better earlier Raspberries songs overall in terms of the actual structure and the songwriting. And you get the sense that Scott's singing at the very top of his range. And there's no real comfort level there. It doesn't seem as effortless as the other singers in the band. He's stretching it as far as it can go, really, which kind of lets the side down. They never seem like a band who stretch things. All Through the Night, I think it's quite annoying too, with the all through the night, it almost sounds like it almost sounds like a Creedence Clearwater outtake. You can hear the dun 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 all through the night. Willie and the Poor Boys are playing. It just sounds like it could roll straight into Willie and the Poor Boys.
Donna Summer had a song called All Through the Night on her Bad Girls album.
I'm sure there's been playing.
Wasn't that Cyndi Lauper? It's a Jules Shear song.
Yeah, that's a great song, though.
Even then, the lyrics like going to make you sweat till the sheets are wet. Come on.
Hey, man. It was the 70s.
Yeah, but it was the 70s when they started as well. But they were a little bit sweet.
Yeah, they've grown.
They weren't 14 years old when they made their first album. It's not 2 years later. No, I just think they've gone too far in trying to put the teenage idol thing away and grow up, and they've taken the wrong idea. Well, let's put bad language in it and get raunchier. I think that's the wrong message, and I think that's the wrong thing they've taken from it.
They took the Miley Cyrus route.
Yeah, basically
Without the wrecking ball.
This is Eric on a wrecking ball, just naked. And it even has now that I've already had you, I'm getting bored with the idle chat, which is very much the Faces, isn't it? Stay with me, kick you out of the door, that kind of stuff. Musically, it's not as heavy as the Faces, but I could see, you know, a Foghat or some kind of second rater doing that kind of thing. Cruise music, very Beach Boys. It's impossible to listen to that and not just picture it on pretty much any 60s Beach Boys record. It's pretty much Do It Again Part 2, isn't it? Yep. And who's complaining there? It could be mixed better to let Eric's voice soar more. There's a few parts where it overtakes the harmonies overtake him, but it's pretty fantastic otherwise. I Can Hardly Believe You're Mine, bit of an older school Carmen. This is more Eric from the first few records, where pop romance then turns into rock romance, and I like the country twang on the guitars. It's very nice. It's cool to hear those parts. Love the harmonies in the chorus. Cry starts out as a wistful ballad and again turns into an angry rocker with the whole You Made a Fool Out of Me and Boogie Woogie piano outro. So I think they're losing that distinctiveness here as well. They've just kind of got this formula of if it does start quiet, we'll then go loud, because people seem to have liked that on other albums. I think they're making the kind of tracks I think people want to hear from them rather than do what they've probably got in their heads, which is probably never the best thing. Is, you know, give the audience not what they want, but what they need. Is, I think, the best way to do it. Hands on You, I really don't like. I really don't like that at all. I mean, the whole mariachi horns intro with the three bananas and an apple, and they're just having a laugh in the studio. I mean, if that reminds you of the Beach Boys, it's the Beach Boys party, but it sounds like they're just faking a party here. You know, it just sounds like
it's filler, that song.
It's just absolute nonsense. Or the Tremors doing Even the Bad Times Are Good. And again, adding the raunchier parts, like I've got, down below, I've got my hands on you. Where's your friend? I want her too.
What's all that weird talking at the end? Don't shout at the moon.
Yeah,
what's that all about?
I mean, you know, do we need to talk about? Do the Raspberries need to go from side 3 to lyrics about fingering and then wanting the friend to join in too? I don't think so. We've just gone far too far in that direction in this album, I think, to be adult all of a sudden, you know. And it's a bit like a filmmaker when they think that being adult just means having more sex scenes and violence and swearing rather than themes. You know, it's a bit like that for me. Juvenile is the word that I've used.
They're trying to be macho. That's what they're trying to be.
Yeah, and it just doesn't come across. It comes across as juvenile, more juvenile than their actual juvenile stuff, because that was more mature, because it was a juvenile learning to grow up. Whereas this just comes across as facile, to be honest. Starting over, Bruce Springsteen's one of my great heroes, and I do not understand why he thinks this is one of the greatest songs ever written, because, sorry, Bruce, it's not. It's not in my top 1,000. In fact, Bruce himself has written about 350 better than this. Just nothing there, really. I mean, it's weird to hear Eric starting with I used to feel so fucking optimistic.
Aren't you tough, Eric? Saying fucking.
So what does the fucking add to that? I used to feel so optimistic. It could be anything. It could be goddamn. But it's swearing because we're adult Raspberries now and we're moving on a bit. I don't like that. I think that's just cheap. I think that's cheap for the sake of it. And I've got no issue with swearing, as people well know. But that's a fucking disgrace. And then apart from that, you've got clunky lyrics as well. So not just facile lyrics, you've got clunky lyrics like buried my romantic inclination deep inside of me till I fell for you immoderately. No.
I never thought to analyze it that deep.
What the hell? That is one of the
And
worst.
when I give an assignment, you guys really go in. You
That
dive
is-
deep.
I took notes for this, but Davey always goes much deeper than anyone.
I have had nothing to do for about 2 weeks. I've been living with this, but every time I hear that line, buried my romantic inclination deep inside of me till I fell for you immoderately. No,
Are
just
these Beach Boys lyrics off of MIU?
listen. If Mike Love wrote that,
That's a better album.
Mike would throw himself out.
No way, no way.
It is. Seriously, that is worse than anything Mike Love has ever written. That one couplet that I read out there. If Mike Love wrote that, he would be embarrassed. It's just bizarre. It seems odd that a ballad that could, with a few alterations, including to some terrible lyrics, could have been a single, a kind of Andrew Gold-like single, one of those kind of middle-of-the-road singles.
Love Andrew Gold.
I love Andrew Gold. I love Never Let Her Slip Away and stuff like that. What was that band they had in the 80s? What was the band in the 80s that they had?
UK Wax UK.
Well, they were just Wax here. Yeah, they were great. Absolutely fantastic. And the theme tune for the Golden Girls, lest we forget. But, you know, adding in stuff like the swearing and whatnot just makes it unsuitable for radio. So you think, well, you want your hit single? Maybe stop adding all these stupid swearing parts then, you moron. I don't think that anything here has the emotion of don't want to say goodbye, I saw the light, I can remember, and by coincidence, they're off in the debut album, which is by far my favourite Raspberries album, by far. So, you know, I mean, even on this last track here, the piano motif is very Tiny Dancer, and it does pinpoint the road to Eric's solo career, you know, with the with the piano ballads, obviously. But to me, the album overall has some great stuff on it. But when the Raspberries do something wrong, it disappoints you more. But like Ryan was saying, because you've loved them so much, you know, it's like being let down by a friend as opposed to being let down by somebody you barely know. It just hurts a little bit more. So, is it a 6? I don't know. I was thinking 7, but reading my notes, they weren't as positive as I thought in my head, even when I was listening. But I do think, given I've been recuperating all week, I haven't been in a very rock mood, so I don't think I should give it 6. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt that in another week I might like it a bit more and say 6.5.
All right, 6.5. Fair enough.
And again, that might be generous too, because in another week, it could be a 5.
God, that seems pretty harsh.
I thought about that too,
it's
honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough, Davey. I appreciate your review. That's 6.5. So what we're going to do, I'm going to tally all of it together, and then we'll do an average, just to let everyone know. I didn't explain that before since it's such a haphazard beginning. Anyway, Rich, welcome aboard. Nice to see you. How are you? How's everything going?
Good. I'm a bit shell-shocked after hearing those reviews. I don't know what to say now.
Hey, what do you think? Give us your whole spiel.
Well, I both agree and disagree equally. I understand where Ryan's coming from. The thing about this album is that I first got into the Raspberries when I got a 2 for CD, which had the last 2, side 3, and this on. If you ever get it, it's good. It's called Power Pop Volume. They released 2 CD compilations, and you know, I read the liner notes and I thought, oh, this is really interesting, and I absolutely loved side 3. And to me, it seemed logical that they were obviously going to try to stay on the sort of harder route, you know, rather than they weren't going to go back and go softer. I think what happened with this album is that they made 2 these real pop masterpieces, and they probably got a lot of crap from the critics who just thought they were like a really silly boy band or whatever. I mean, look on the cover of Fresh. I mean, they're like, look, they didn't see the humor in it or anything. They probably thought, oh, they're just trying to be the Beatles or whatever. And they probably thought they had to branch out of that and try to get conform more to what was happening at the time, which was like cock rock and hard rock and all that sort of thing. And I think that's the flaw of this album. It's Ryan and Davy would agree. They're trying too hard. They're trying too hard to sound like all the boys, you know. Whereas the thing that's great about the Raspberries and that we love about the Raspberries and all great power pop bands is that they're all about the melodies, the harmonies, and the hooks. And that's what we love them for. They're not trying to strut around on stage like Robert Plant or, you know, Angus Young or what's his name, Bon Scott or whatever. They're more sort of just everyman type. But anyway, apart from that, this is my third favorite Raspberries album. And the reason I rate it a bit higher than the debut album is because I think what ruins the debut album for me is those Dave Smalley songs. I think they are the ones that conform too much, like Rock and Roll Mama and Get It Moving. They're sort of boogie rock songs from that time. Maybe people like the contrast of that in comparison to the Eric Carmen sweeter stuff. But the thing I like about this album is Ryan said that he thinks that it's not that they're not trying hard enough. I actually think they're trying really hard to make a really well produced album on this. To me, the production is absolute state of the art pop rock studio, 1970s, as good as it could be. I mean, the production's massive. I mean, the drums are massive, the vocals, the guitars, everything's really big on this album. And that's what I like. I think because I grew up as a 70s kid, I grew up with hearing hard rock on the radio and power pop and, bands. I don't know if I'm Australian. Have you ever heard of a band called Sherbet, a big pop band in the 70s? Oh, anyway,
I have not.
They were the biggest pop band, an Australian pop band in the 70s. And like the Raspberries and like this album, they made massively big produced pop rock music with anthemic choruses and beefed up like keyboards and stuff like that. They were the biggest thing next to Skyhooks. You know, if you heard of Skyhooks, but anyway. So that's probably why I like the sound of this album. It kind of takes me back to that time in the 70s. So I'll go through track by track. I just got a little few notes here. The thing about Overnight Sensation hit record, I think Eric Carmen's probably answering to his critics on that song. He's saying people are probably making fun of the Raspberry because we want to get hit records and we're crafting all these 3-minute pop songs where we're also surrounded by the era of prog rock and blues rock. And it's like, you think it's really uncool. It's like, this is what I do for a living. I want to hit record. I want to make a living from it. What's wrong with that? So I like the sentiment of that song. I think it's Eric Carmen's masterpiece. I think it's his statement, his kind of manifesto. This is who I am. I'm a pop musician. I'm making a living from it. And I want to get a record on the radio. So what? What's wrong with that? Anyway, but it's great. I think it's a really, really fantastic creation. I love the way it builds up toward the end. And like Davy said, it's got that sound where it's coming out of the radio. I think that's really clever. And those drums. And I like the way at the very end of it, you hear a little snippet in the background of Go All the Way. It's like humorous little touch. What's the next one? Play On. Scott McCall. He was like really, really good. He was like really talented guy. He's got really great kind of Lennon type voice. It's a real stomping track. It's really, really catchy, really anthemic. I don't know. I like it. Got a great chorus. I think that Scott McCall and Eric worked really well together. I think they both were on the same page. Whereas when you get to the next track, Party's Over, I think you can really hear the contrast of maybe what the conflict was between Eric and Wally. I think Wally really wanted to embrace the kind of hard rock swaggering, he's gonna, when we started, he's like really sort of, and he says shit obviously in the song. And I think that indicates probably why they split up, isn't it? Because I think Wally wanted to go in a more harder direction and rock out, whereas Eric still wanted to stick to the whole British invasion kind of melodic sound. And I think Scott McCall was on the same page with him there. But Party's Over is a fun song, but it's very typical of early 70s kind of, barroom rock or whatever. I don't know what I want. Yeah, it's a total Who pastiche. I mean, the moment you hear it, it's like, won't get fooled again. The drums, I Can See for Miles. the drums on that are just totally like, it's almost like Eric said to the producer, I Can See for Miles drummers on that. It's totally, but like all Eric Carmen songs, I don't think I've ever heard an Eric Carmen song where he doesn't try to write a great middle eight. On just about every song he writes, it's never about a guitar solo or an interlude. It's always a middle eight. And this is another great middle eight. All his songs have great middle eights. And so what's the next one? Rose-Colored Glasses is a sweet song. I think it's probably the closest the Raspberries ever came to some kind of a hippie sentiment. You know, I think it's, I see the world through rose-colored glasses. I don't want to see anything bad. I think it's very early 70s hippiedom. But yeah, it's a nice song. It's not one of my favorite songs off the album though. What's next? All Through the Night is probably my least favorite song. Actually, no, Hands on You would be my least favorite song. But All Through the Night to me sounds like some attempt to sound like Rod Stewart or something. It's like a real barroom rocker, and it's got this. The sentiment of the song is actually quite similar to the Faces' Stay With Me. You know the song by Faces, Stay With Me? It's all about groupies, and, you know, the sentiment of the song is, you got to realize, sweetheart, this is just a one-night stand. I'm a rocker, and you're going to have to deal with it. But that's kind of what he's trying to channel, that kind of barroom swagger. You know, it's catchy. I mean, it is a bit corny. The chorus is definitely a bit corny. What's next? Cruising Music, again, another Beach Boys pastiche. I think as a Beach Boys pastiche, it's much better than Driving Around. I think even Eric Carmen, when I read the liner notes to those CDs, he said that he was a bit disappointed by Driving Around. It didn't really turn out the way he wanted. Maybe with this one, he was trying to better it and make it better with the more sort of contemporary production. And I think it's good. I mean, I think in those liner notes too, Wally said that he thought it was a waste of time to do another Beach Boys pastiche. Who knows what kind of material Eric Carmen had stored up? Apparently, he had massive amount of songs that never got recorded, so he didn't really need to do another Beach Boys pastiche. But you know, he did it anyway. But it's got a really great chorus. Yeah. It's like Hardly Believe You're Mine. Well, that's kind of like prototypical power ballad, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of like power ballads before power ballads happened. I really like the organ on it. The really, darling, when the organ comes in, it's really nice. I think the thing about this album is that, like Ryan said, that Eric just didn't give a crap at this time. I think the main flaw with this album, which I agree with both you guys, is that it's very much about the craft. It doesn't have the sort of spontaneous kind of excitement of the previous three albums. It's like Eric and the producers are trying to craft something that's really, this is the one we got to go for. If this album doesn't make us, if this doesn't succeed, then we're out. And so they try to make state of the art, crafting it perfectly for the early 70s. And yeah, so that's what I think. Cry, was it Cry next? How do you be? Cry, yeah. Well, Cry sounds to me like it's almost like a Lennon song from the Help era or something. It's really Scott McCall, so obviously influenced by John Lennon. You can just tell straight away. It just sounds like, yeah, a 65, 66 era Lennon song, anguished kind of ballad. And when it goes into that sort of like, dun, baby, dun, dun, it's like got that real typical 70s swagger. What was the next one? Hands on You.
Hands on You.
That's filler, that song. I mean, it's, as I said, I mean, with a songwriter of the class of Eric Carmen, you think they could have tried a bit harder to put some more memorable songs in there. He must have had other material. Maybe they were just trying to have a bit of fun.
I don't even know why it needs to be on there, because this is the longest album by nearly 10 minutes.
Yeah, and also considering the fact that this album is quite clearly, as far as I can hear from the sound and the production, it's their attempt to say, you know, to really just make a state-of-the-art rock pop album from that time that's going to convince everybody that, like, if you don't like this, we're out of here. Why put something like that on it? And it's just, it sounds like it's a calculated kind of move to kind of make them sound like they're all a bunch of party dudes and look at us. It's almost like they're around the campfire or something. They were, you know, but.
You know what it is? It's Beach Boys Party.
Is
Yeah,
that
That's
it
what it is.
Nice.
Well, no, but listen to it. It could have been on Beach Boys Party. Just saying.
I don't know that album. Has it got acoustic guitars on it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. It's
I'll
like
have to
that.
check it out. When did that come out?
65.
65.
All right. Okay.
It was
All
the
right.
album that came out before Pet Sounds. It was
All
like,
right.
you know, they had a rush.
Very
It was,
different from Pet Sounds.
well,
Yeah.
they just had to crank out an album, you know.
Yeah. But starting over, I am also like Ryan and Davey, frustrated by Eric's. I mean, when he says, I mean, it's such a perfectly crafted song that could have been a big hit. Why go fucking optimistic? You're just trying to prove you can be edgy. This is like a total sentimental ballad, and he puts that word in it. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He could have just said something like, I used to feel so optimistic, or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's a nice song, and the thing I really like about it is that synth. Is it a synth on that synth solo?
Yeah, and it's terrible. It sounds like the theme
Well,
tune to Taxi.
Yeah, well, you know why I like it. You know why I like it is because in the 70s, when I watched all those TV shows as a kid, it sounds like a TV theme. It
Yeah,
sounds like one of those.
Sounds like the Rockford Files.
Yeah, so so that's kind of why I like that sound, because it takes me back to that time when I used to spend my life in front of the TV watching all those classic sitcoms and stuff as a kid. But it also makes me a bit sad, you know, that because it's like the end of the Raspberries, and you can sort of, it's almost like he's saying it at the end of it. I mean, this is the end of it. But I like the way it ends when it has that key change at the end with the horns, and I think that's a really nice ending to it. I don't know. So I could probably say a few more things about this. I mean, everyone's said enough, I reckon. But
what would you rate this? What would you give it?
Okay, I would give it a 7.5.
Okay.
I think it's a really good, enjoyable album. The production makes it more enjoyable than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that Eric Carmen's such a great craftsman, and he knows that, and I think Scott McCall, I mean, if the Raspberries had gone on, Scott McCall would have been a really great asset, I think. I think he's really talented. I mean, he never really did anything after this, did he?
Well, I know there's a couple of... Ooh, I know he put out a...
You're right.
Uh-oh. No, but the chair just broke.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have to edit that out. There are a couple of Scott McCall solo albums out there. I know that.
Oh, really? Yeah. But I think that he was the perfect partner for Eric Carmen as a writer at this stage.
I think he's great. I love all of his work.
And he seems like a pretty young guy too.
Well, I'm just going to ask you the same thing. I'll ask Davey too. Do you think Michael McBride and Scott McCall were assets to this band at this point in the career? Do you guys miss Dave Smalley and Jim? I'm just curious. I mean, did it change the band? It seems like we've had these two new individuals come into the band. It really changed the band quite a bit.
Yeah, I think they've turned into a full-on rock band at this point, or intend to at least. And I think Michael is a perfect drummer for that because he's an absolute beast.
He's a beast,
right?
Yeah.
Scott's versatile musician, so he seems like he'd be an asset. I don't really like basing my opinions based on just that one album because, as we know, Dave Smalley got off to quite a dull start on the debut and then got a lot better.
True.
Yeah, he did. He improved a lot on Fresh.
So what could Scott have done with another two albums? Don't know.
Yeah.
So, you know, on this basis, yeah, I do miss them, but if they had another two albums and it was comparable in terms of lineups, then maybe not. But then that would have taken us up to 76 or 77. I don't know. It feels like the world would have just changed far too much for the Raspberries by then. And even things like the name, I don't think that name was ever going to cross over into, you know, from the Teen Factory. Was a band called the Raspberries. I think the best thing they could have done at that point, if they wanted to start fresh, starting over, is got a new name, started over.
Yeah,
I think the Raspberries were 5 years too late or something for the power pop explosion of the late 70s. But if they had been around at that time, You know, I think their songs, especially obviously the more power pop melodic ones, would have been perfect for that time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the problem by them was Eric had already had a million seller and would never have gone back to rock and roll because he was just chasing the the all by myself kind of money that he could make by then.
Did you know he said he actually took that melody all by myself? It's the same melody of Let's Pretend. So he used it again.
Yeah, I think we did mention that.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, if with Scott McCall, he had someone who was kind of on his side about doing the sort of British invasion kind of style, and they would have collaborated. But if they'd gone on, I mean, did Eric really at heart want to do really sappy stuff like All By Myself, or did he want to keep on doing the British invasion thing? It's really hard to say, isn't it? If they got another chance.
Very hard, because in the liner notes for the BGO3 that Ryan and Grant and I picked up, he does say that he was making music to sell, not to enjoy for himself.
He probably thought by then, you know, if you don't get the Raspberries by now, that's it. I'm just going to make commercial music.
It's a smart decision because, you know, it wasn't going to be set up for life by a couple of hit singles the way they had contracts written in favour of the artist back then, was he? So, you know, getting some publishing under his rights for a song like All By Myself is a much smarter way to go about things. And then, did he write Hungry Eyes for Dirty Dancing?
No, he didn't.
He didn't even write that.
No, he didn't.
That's a shame, because that would have been a nice earner for him if that was the case.
I think he wrote the other one. What's that other one that he got famous for? Make Me Lose Control. I think
I think he wrote that.
I bet he must wish he was really on the Dirty Dancing soundtrack with the writing credit, though, because that still sells to this day to every 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, it's probably why he hasn't bothered making music for God knows how long. He's just living on his money.
Yeah, it's been 25 years.
Well, that Raspberries tour, how many years ago was that? 15 years ago?
15 years ago.
14?
I think
wasn't it 2003?
No, 2007 was the last show.
Oh, okay.
And then they did one final one that wasn't public. I think it was behind closed doors in 2010. But yeah, I read it was 15 years ago last night. So
yeah, I just saw something about that.
I was a bit disappointed when they released yet another live album instead of. I mean, there must be some good live shows from there. You know, when they were together in the early 70s on tape.
Well, we had raised the possibility in previous episodes. Where's the outtakes? Where's the demos discs?
I know there must be some good stuff.
I mean, I've got I'm a massive fan of Crosby, Stills and Nash, and some of my favorite stuff are the demos tapes where you get to hear without all the harmonies and without the big productions and things, just to hear Graham Nash at the piano coming up with these songs, or Crosby strumming away. I'd love to hear that for the Raspberries, to hear it stripped back. I'd love to. Live's a bit different because, as we know, you know, it would have needed either a professional on site to record a live album, which was never mooted, or it would have needed a good bootlegger, and they weren't big enough of a band really to guarantee that.
Didn't they play the Royal Albert Hall once? During the Side 3 era or something like that. No, Carnegie. Sorry. Carnegie Hall. They played Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, I think they played Carnegie Hall, but
so
yeah, and Eric said that was like a magic night. So there must be a tape of that around somewhere.
You're really talking the late 70s before bootlegging became ubiquitous, when tape prices came down and they were small enough that people could put in their pocket.
For most people anyway. I think artists like Bob Dylan and stuff used to have massive.
Yeah, Dylan was bootlegged as early as 60. The first proper bootleg was the bootleg.
That famous one.
The basement tapes. So Dylan was bootlegged as early as this 68. So you know, could have been.
That's why he put out that weird self-portrait album. He reckoned I did it to piss off the bootleggers and people.
To release his own official bootleg.
Yeah,
which kind of backfired because it ruined his reputation for 5 years.
Exactly.
But yeah, it'd be interesting.
I remember you guys mentioned that Carnegie Hall show. I think they recorded it, but something happened to the tapes.
Yeah.
Or was the story is they didn't have permission or something to do with the union?
Well, I know
I could be wrong.
Carnegie Hall is one of those places you need to pay a fortune just to play there. And then you also need to pay to use the words Carnegie Hall on your album.
That's true. Yeah, you'd have to.
So it could have cost them a fortune just to release live at Carnegie Hall.
I mean, I could be totally wrong. I could be confusing this with another story, but
and I'm just going along with that narrative that that's the truth. Unfortunately, it just feels like if it's not out by now, the market's only getting smaller for them with age, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree.
I just noticed David H said, I think Sherbet may have had a UK top 10 single. Yeah, it was How's That. That's their best known song. It was a big hit in England. It's have you ever heard that song, guys? How's that? You messed about, I caught you out. How's that? You know, it's like a metaphor for playing cricket, you know. It
wasn't a hit over here.
Okay.
No,
they tried to make it in America later on. They called themselves Highway, I think they called themselves, or the Sherbs and then Highway. And they failed miserably commercially when they tried to make it in America. But they were the biggest pop band ever in Australia in the 70s. Check them out. Daryl Braithwaite, the lead singer, is still out there doing his thing. Them and Skyhook. So those Skyhooks were much different.
I know Skyhook.
Yeah. They were raunchier and they used to put on makeup and stuff like that. Whereas Sherbet were like the ultimate sort of girls band and very pop band. Well, some of their stuff's almost power pop. A song like, I'd recommend looking up a song called Summer Love. That's kind of when I was talking about, you know, the sound of the 70s that the Raspberries were kind of doing big time pop rock music. But the Sherbets were definitely, I reckon, influenced by that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to check them out.
Yeah, they were massive. Like there was a pop show in the 70s and 80s called Countdown, hosted by Molly Meldrum. He was called Ian Molly Meldrum, and every Sunday, all us kids in front of the TV every Sunday watched that show. And Sherbet were like one of the most common performers on that show. Obviously, always lip syncing usually, but you should go back. You'd love looking up Australian pop history, man. You would love it. We've got like a massive.
Well, we do a lot of shows with Peter Kerr and you know, bicyclelegs and you know. Peter
Sherbet weren't cool, by the way. I'm just letting you know, but
he always is up recommending different bands for us to listen to. If I try to write them down, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, we
Yeah,
probably should wind this dog up.
What do you think about this album, Grant?
I like this album more than you guys like this album. Originally, when I listened to this record, I didn't like the idea that there was a lineup change. It kind of tarnished it for me. But after playing with it for all week and really immersing myself into the record, I think the production's great. I think it sounds like a much more of a group effort to some degree, because side 3 wasn't so much a group effort, and I think they tried to get that back together. I think the star of the show is Michael McBride's drums. Eric Carmen's piano playing on here is just phenomenal through the whole thing.
He's a great pianist.
And I really like Scott McCarl. I think he's just an asset. I have nothing against Dave Smalley, but I think Scott McCarl, if they would have kept going, I think they could have really done something more. Yeah. Is this album more calculated? It's harder. You know, they're giving homage to the Who. That Who track is definitely. I mean, I don't have any issues with it. I think it's nice that they're paying tribute to the Who to some degree. But I do have a question real quick since we're talking that track. Online it says Eric Carmen's doing the vocal, but doesn't sound like Eric Carmen to me at all. Is it Scott McCarl or is it Eric Carmen?
It's Eric.
Is it Eric?
Sure. Yeah. When he sings in a lower register, he sounds a bit different. You know, when he goes, "My old man says success is a measure," that's him. You know, he's different when he gets in a higher register, though.
Yeah, you're right.
But he really rocks that track when he goes, "I want to know." It's like,
I think it's great. Whether you know.
And of course, it's got a great middle eight, like all Eric Carmen songs.
It's got a great middle eight.
A lot of Who songs don't have a great middle eight. You know?
Rose-Colored Glasses, I have no problem with that track at all. I think, like I wrote in my notes, I think Scott McCarl is a great addition to the band. It's a lovely ballad. His bass playing, too, is very melodic, very Paul McCartney-esque. I don't know. He fits right in like a glove in this band.
Yeah.
Cruising music, you know, we've talked about that. They're in Beach Boys mode again. I think it's fine. Hands on You, I just think that's a throwaway. We've all talked about that. It's just basically a Beach Boys party track to me. And Starting Over, I think, is a beautiful track. I think it's a bit of foreshadowing. You can tell we're going into that sappy Eric Carmen thing, which is fine because we are going to be looking at these Eric Carmen albums too. So, but I think the orchestration on this record's great. Yeah, it's them pushing the limits, or it's trying to say, hey, look at us, we can do this. You know, trying to make a great album. After listening to it again and really diving into it, it doesn't bother me so much that we lost Dave Smalley and Jim.
He was trying, wasn't he trying to push the band in a more sort of country sounding direction? You can tell with that song, Should I Wait? I mean, that sounded like the Eagles or something. And I think that probably really annoyed Eric Carmen, as if Eric Carmen would ever do country. It's just not him.
I don't know. You know, if they could have done country rock or something and got away with it. I mean, it was a much bigger seller album wise. So I mean, to do a country rocker, I mean, doesn't sound like a bad idea to me.
Time too, as you know, as well as all the cock rock and prog rock and all that sort of stuff. Country rock
that was selling albums much more than teeny bopper stuff at the time. With Polko in America, you know, underneath even your big ones like Crosby, Stills, Nash, Neil Young, and James Taylor and the like. So, you know, underneath that, you still have plenty of room for a. But again, your name would hold you back. You couldn't have a country rock band called the Raspberries. Yeah.
I don't know. But I would probably give this album, golly, I keep changing my rankings on all these records as we go through the catalog. Because originally I thought Fresh was my favorite, and then I went up side 3, bumped it. I don't know. I think I'd give this record a solid... I think I'd give it a solid 8. I really do like the whole thing.
There, you mind up for you.
Maybe, maybe some of the lyrics are kind of juvenile, but most of the time when I'm doing these reviews, I'm always listening to the music. That's what I'm listening to first. And I think from a musical aspect, I think this is probably some of their best work. Some of the Wally guitar parts on this record, his lead stuff on here is killer. And Michael McBride is a killer drummer.
See, I'm a bit more with Ryan when it comes to the production. I don't think the production helps them out as solo instruments. I can hear great parts, but I can't hear them well enough. I think there needs to be more separation.
None of these.
I don't think the bass stands out enough at all.
Well, don't forget, these Raspberries albums are never going to win any audiophile awards.
No.
Because most of these records...
Ryan said it was the worst sounding one, and I tend to agree with him for that.
I don't know. I'm listening to the Japanese import of it, and it sounds pretty good. So
yeah, well, the box sets have all sounded great so far, but this one, even then, it just feels like Eric's voice is buried underneath some harmonies, and there's bass lines that you can barely pick up. Yeah.
Well, I think Eric could be hotter in the mix a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
You know the mix on, you know that Capitol Collector Series compilation?
Yeah, yeah.
The mix of Overnight Sensation on that is really good.
Yeah.
I think that was deliberately done for that compilation to be better.
Well, a lot of those Capitol Collector Series, a lot of that stuff's all remixed, and I cannot remember if the Raspberry stuff was remixed or not, or that was like I'd have to pull it, and it's the damn CD's too far away from me.
Yeah, well, that one's definitely remixed. You can hear it straight away. Especially when the drums come out at the end, it's like, whoa.
But that comp sounds really good. I mean, if you're getting into them, you just want a good compilation.
Yeah, it's a good fix.
Capitol Collector Series is worth picking up, you know.
I've got, what have I got here? I've got my Raspberries albums right behind me. I got the famous one. Where is it? Raspberries Best. You know that one?
Mm-hmm.
Featuring Eric Carmen. I won't bother trying to get it out.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. That's like the one that came out in like 76 or something. 70.
Yeah.
This is an Australian promo copy of the first, and it still smells. You can. It's really like it's almost like it's new. Oh, that's amazing.
Uh-oh. Just got a text from Peter Kerr. So anyway, we took of all Ryan got all four of us. Ryan gave it a 6. Davy gave it a 6.5. Rich gave it a 7.5. I'm giving it an 8. It just keeps going up. So together the average, we're giving it a 7. I think a 7's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, either you like this record or you don't. But at the time it came out, it got a lot of great reviews, you know.
Yeah.
Even Robert Christgau liked it. So.
It's in the Mojo. There's a Mojo book came out a few years ago, and it's in the Mojo. Mojo obviously, you know.
You can hear why Springsteen loves it. You can hear exactly why he would love it. You know, it's got that big sound. And Max Weinberg, the drummer, says that McBride was a massive influence on his playing. And, you know, Springsteen had already been going by then. So, you know, he'd already 2 albums out by the time this had landed.
You can tell Michael McBride how great he was by that, how do you pronounce it, Don Kirshner?
Yeah, Don Kirshner.
Yeah.
That famous concert they did around that time where you can just tell he was a real
I never mentioned John Lennon apparently mixed or the opening track. What's it called again? I was just going to call it
Overnight Sensation.
Overnight Sensation. And that was his favourite. And apparently he was in the sessions and may have helped mix it or produce it, depending on how you listen to it.
There's a famous photo of him wearing a Raspberries
t-shirt,
going like this, you know.
Yeah. So, you know,
that must have been a thrill, wasn't it? Imagine John Lennon being.
Oh, if you're a Beatles nut, and then John Lennon comes into the studio and says, "I'll help you mix your."
It's like, oh, okay.
But then, you know, it turns out all you're doing is stuff that doesn't sound like the stuff that John Lennon liked in the first place. Would be, oops.
Well, it's not the Primal album.
Yeah,
that's about as raw as it gets.
All right, boys, let's wrap this one up. I want to thank Ryan, Davy, and Rich for coming on tonight. We had a rough start in the beginning, but I'm going to redo this one and re-edit it.
So you're going through all the Eric Carmen albums as well, are you? All of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the plan.
I only really like the first 2. I haven't really bothered with the other ones, to be honest. But
I like that 4th album. I kind of like the 4th album, to be quite honest.
Is that Tonight You're Mine, or is that just self?
There's some great tracks on there.
There's only 8 songs on it.
Well, that's all you need. 8 tracks of greatness. All right, so I want to thank everybody for coming on, leaving a comment. Thanks for being patient. I don't know what happened with StreamYard. Something was weird. It was definitely strange. Thanks, Ernesto. Appreciate the comments. So I wish everybody good night. And you guys, thanks for coming on.
Okay, thanks. See you later.
See ya. Take care.